Alright, so what is deja vu? How does it work? Have you ever experienced deja vu or premonition? Or maybe even experienced a more spiritual aspect of it, such as like a past life or reincarnation? So what some people have come to believe, but there's different types of deja vu that we all experience. About 70% of the population experiences deja vu. The first would be associative deja vu, which is what most healthy people believe they experience. It's more known as when you're awake and you have a familiar sense of you've done this before, you've seen this before. And I have a chart here that shows kind of what I'm talking about. So first we have A. A being, oh, I've drank this drink before, let's say a Coke. B being, I'm at dinner. And then C being, I'm with all my friends. The next thing would be, well, I have A, the Coke, I have B, the dinner, but I'm missing my friends. So then we put X being the unknown. Well, we say, oh, we're just going to throw our friends in there. And then so somehow that becomes our familiarity with the, I guess, set of things that are happening or the event in time that's happening. So we automatically familiarize ourselves with certain things that we do, and we put them together in a pattern that makes familiarity. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is basically biological deja vu, which happens when you have a seizure or some sort in the temporal lobe. Now this happens like right before people have seizures. They'll have an experience of deja vu, like they've done something before or they've experienced something before. And there's also longer lasting deja vus where they feel like they've actually experienced it way in the past, but it happens in the future. And I'll show you, the temporal lobe is about right here. It's very deep in the brain, towards the bottom, and this is where people experience the seizures. The next thing is, it's also a way more reliable way to study deja vu, because there's not very many scientists that are able to study deja vu because there's not something that can just trigger deja vu. It's not something we can just go to sleep and it happens, or they can give us a pill and it fires off, you know, all the receptors in our brain to make it happen. It's something that some would say is more spiritual. They don't start occurring in your body until about 8 to 9 years old, and even then it's very slim to none. You really start experiencing them in your teenage years up until your late 20s. It is a situation that has been more studied now since we have more medical, I guess, access to your brain. We have MRIs, things like that, that can see the electronic patterns in our brains. But there's also another type of deja vu people would call a premonition or a precognition. It's basically a glimpse of the future. So some might say you might even be psychic because you can do this. And there's all types of people who have foreseen events, who have said the World Trade Centers were going to blow up, or who have, you know, known that a church was going to blow up, or they've saved a kid or saved some people's lives from getting on a train or getting on a plane. Things like this have happened all around the world, and we don't know how it happens or why it happens, but we do know that it has happened. Some say it's a blessing from God that they didn't get on that train, or that they didn't get on the plane or die for that instance, but and some have used it as a tool to save other people's lives. Swiss author Funkhauser says dreams are the source of our premonitions. They are the source of our deja vus. Now we can't separate deja vu from premonition, or premonition from deja vu. They are one and the same, but they are somewhat different in certain aspects. Like I said, one is a sense of familiarity, where you're just familiar with the situation at hand. You're familiar with the drink, the Coke, and you're like, oh, I've been here before, and it's just a moment that passes. Whereas a premonition is something that is a much greater, more traumatic sometimes, exciting experience, where it's something in the future. Now these premonitions can happen anywhere from 1 day to 8 years later. There's not always a set timeline on when these things happen. Basically, the premonitions, the associative deja vu, and the biological deja vu are all connected, but the deja vu that determines what is familiar is the hippocampus and the parahippocampus gyrus, and that's determining what is familiar when it comes in through our receptors, through our eyes, or visually through our brain. Even blind people can go into a room that they've never been in before and somehow walk through it just fine without ever being there, and they can see pictures and somehow feel some type of feeling, and they've never seen their entire life, and they know that it's either happy or sad. Or some people can look at the back of the card that I'm holding it and tell me what is on the back of the card. They can say, oh, it's Ace of Spades, and they've never seen the card before that I'm holding up. So I think it's sometimes considered a sixth sense. It's sometimes considered a gift from God, more spiritual, and other times it's just something familiar to us. But have you experienced deja vu? Do you have premonitions? This is the question we all ask ourselves.